Vadis, chapter 22. Only inside the entrance did Vinicius comprehend the whole difficulty of the undertaking. The house was large, of several stories, one of the kind of which thousands were built in Rome, in view of profit from rent. Hence, as a rule, they were built so hurriedly and badly that scarcely a year passed in which numbers of them did not fall on the heads of tenants. Real hives, too high, too narrow, full of chambers and little dens in which poor people fixed themselves too numerously. In a city where many streets had no names, those houses had no numbers. The owners committed the collection of rent to slaves who did not oblige to the city government to give names of occupants, were ignorant themselves of them frequently. To find someone by inquiry in such a house was often very difficult, especially there was no gatekeeper. Vinicius and Croton came to a narrow corridor like a passage walled in on four sides, forming a kind of common atrium for the whole house, with a fountain in the middle whose stream fell into a stone basin fixed in the ground. All at the walls were internal stairways, some of stone, some of wood, leading to galleries from which there were entrances to lodgings. There were lodgings on the ground also, some provided with wooden doors, others separated from the yard by woolen screens only. These, for the greater part, were worm, rent, or parched. The hour was early, and there was not a living soul in the yard. It was evident that all were asleep in the house except those who had returned from Ostrianum. "What shall we do, Lord?" asked Croton, halting. "Let us wait here. Someone might appear," replied Vinicius. "We should not be seen in the yard." At this moment he thought Chilo's counsel practical. If there were some 10 of slaves present, it would be easy to occupy the gate, which seemed the only exit, search all the lodgings simultaneously, and thus come to Lygia. Otherwise, Christians, who surely were not lacking in the house, might have noticed that people were seeking her. In view of this, there was risk in inquiring of strangers. Vinicius stopped to think whether it would be not better to go for his slaves. Just then, from behind, a scream hiding a remoter lodging, came a man with a sieve in his hand and approached the fountain. First glance, the young tribune recognized Ursus. "What is the legend?" whispered Vinicius. Am I to break his bones now? Wait a while." Ursus did not notice the two men as they were in the shadow of the entrance, and he began quietly to sink in water vegetables which filled to sieve. It was evident that, after a whole night spent in the cemetery, he intended to prepare a meal. After a while he After a while the washing was finished, he took the wet sieve and disappeared behind the screen. Croton and Vinicius followed him, thinking that they would come directly to Lygia's lodgings. Their astonishment was great when they saw that the screen divided from the court, not lodgings, but another dark corridor, at the end of which was a little garden containing a few cypresses, some myrtle bush, bushes, and small house fixed to the windowless stone wall of another stone building. Both understood at once that this was for them a favoring circumstance. In the courtyard all the tenants might assemble. The seclusion of the little house facilitated the enterprise. They will set aside defenders, or rather Ursus, quickly, and will reach the street just as quickly with the captured Lygia, and there they will help themselves. It was likely that no one will attack them. If attacked, they will say that a hostage was fleeing from Caesar. Vinicius will declare himself then to the guards and summon their assistance. Ursus was almost entering the little house when the sound of steps attracted his attention. He halted and seeing two persons, but this sieve on the balustrade, and turned to them. "What do ye want here?" asked he. "Leave," said Vinicius. Then turning to Croton, said in a low, hurried voice, "Kill." Croton rushed at him like a tiger in one moment before the legend was able to think or recognized his enemies, Croton had caught him in his arms of steel. Vinicius was too confident in the man's preternatural strength to wait for the end of the struggle. He passed the two, sprang to the door of the little house, pushed it open, and found himself in a little trifle dark, lighted, however, by a fire burning in the chimney. A gleam of this fire fell on his face directly. A second person sitting at the fire was that old man who accompanied the young girl and Ursus on the road from Ostrianum. Vinicius rushed in so suddenly that before Lydia could recognize him, he had seized her by the waist and raising her rushed toward the door again. The old man barred the way, it is true, but pressing the girl with one arm to his breast, Vinicius pushed him aside with the other, which was free. The whole fell from his head, at the size of that face which was known to her, and which at that moment was terrible. The blood grew cold in Lygia from fright, and the voice died in her throat. She wished to summon aid, but had not the power. Equally vain was her wish to grasp the door to resist. Her fingers slipped along the stone, and she would have fainted, but for the terrible picture which struck her eyes when was for the terrible picture which struck her eyes when Vinicius rushed into the garden. Ursus, while holding in his hands a man doubled back completely, with hanging head and a mouth filled with blood. When he saw them, he struck the head once more with his fist, and in the twinkle of an eye sprang toward Vinicius like a raging wild beast. Death! Thought the young patrician. Then he heard, as through a dream, the scream of Lygia, "Kill not!" He felt that something, as it were a thunderbolt, opened the arms which he held Lygia. Then the earth turned round with him, and the light of day died in his eyes. Chilo, hidden behind the angle of the corner house, was waiting for what will happen, since curiosity was struggling with fear in him. He thought that if they succeeded in carrying off Lygia, he will fare well near Vinicius. He feared Urban no longer, for he also felt uncertain that Croton would kill him, and he calculated in that case a gathering should begin on the streets which so far were empty. If Christians or people of any kind should offer resistance, he will speak to them as one representative authority, as an executor of Caesar's will, and if the need came, call the guards to aid the young patrician against the street rabble, thus winning to himself fresh favor. In his soul he judged yet that the young tribune's method was unwise. Considering, however, Croton's terrible strength, he admitted that he might succeed, and though if it got hard with him, Vinicius can carry the girl and Croton clear the way. Delay grew worrisome, however. The silence of the entrance which he watched alarmed him. If they do not hit upon the hidden place and make an uproar, they will frighten her. But the thought was not disagreeable, for Chil understood that in that event he would be necessary again to Vinicius, and could squeeze a fresh and goodly number of sestertia from the tribune. "Whatever they do," said he to himself, "they will work for me, though no one devised that. O gods, only permit me." And he stood suddenly, for it seemed to him that someone was bending forward through the entrance. Then, squeezing up the wall, he began to look, holding the breath in his breast. And he had not deceived himself, for a head thrust itself half out of the entrance and looked around. After a while, however, it vanished. "That is Vinicius or Croton," thought Chilo. "But if they have taken the girl, why does not she scream? And why are looking out to the street? They must meet people anyhow, for before they reach the Carinae, there will be a movement in the city. What is that? By the immortal gods!" And suddenly the remind of his hair stood to the end. In the door appeared Ursus, with the body of Croton hanging on his arm, and looking around once more, he began to run, bearing it along the empty street toward the river. Chilo made himself as flat against the wall as a bit of mud, I am lost if he sees me, he thought. But Ursus ran past the corner quickly and disappeared beyond the neighbor's house. Chilo, neighboring house. Chilo, without further waiting, his teeth chattering from terror, ran out of the cross street with a speed which even a young man might have roused admiration. If he sees me from distance when he is returning, he will catch and kill me, said he to himself. Save me, Zeus. Save me, Apollo. Save me, Hermes. Save me, O God of the Christians, and I will leave Rome. I will return to Mesembria, but save me from the hands of that demon. And that legion who had killed Croton seemed to him at that moment some superhuman being. While running, he thought that he might be some god who had taken the form of a barbarian, and at that moment he believed in all gods of the world and all myths at which he jeered. Usually, it fell through his head, too, that it might be the god of the Christians who had killed Croton, and his hair stood at the end again at the thought that he was on conflict with such power. Only when he heard Only when he had run through that number of alleys he saw some workmen coming toward him from distance. Was he calmed somewhat? Breath failed in his breast. So he sat on the threshold of a house and began to weep. With a corner of his mantle his sweat-covered forehead. Wipe. I am old, I need calm, said he. The people coming toward him turned into some little side street, and again the place round about was empty. The city was sleeping yet. In the morning movement began earlier in the wealthier parts of the city, where the slaves of rich houses were forced to rise before daylight. In portions inhabitants by a few population, supported at the cost of the state, hence unoccupied, they woke rather late, especially in winter. Chilo, after he had sat some time on the threshold, felt a piercing cold, so he rose, and convincing himself that he had not lost the pursuit received from Vinicius, turned toward the river with a step now much slower. I might see Croton's body somewhere, said he to himself. O gods, that legion, if he is a man, might make millions of sestertia in the course of 1 year, for he choked Croton like a whelp. Who can resist him? They will give him every appearance in the arena as much gold as he himself weighs. He guards a maiden better than Cerberus does Hades. But may Hades swallow him for all that. I will have nothing to do with him. He is too bony. But where shall I begin in this case? A dreadful thing has happened. If he has broken the bones of such a man as Croton, beyond a doubt, the soul of Vinicius is pulling above that cursed house now, awaiting his burial by Castor. But he is a patrician, a friend of Caesar, a relative of Petronius, a man known in all Rome, a military tribune. His death cannot pass without punishment. Suppose I were to go to the Petronian camp, or the guards of the city, for instance. Where he stopped and began to think, but said after a while, woe is me. Who took him to that house, if not I? His freedmen and his slaves know that I came to his house, and some of them know that with what object. What will happen if they suspect of having pointed out of him purposely the house in which his death met him, though it appear afterward in the court that I do not wish his death? They will say that I was the cause of it. Besides, he is a patrician, hence not in one event can I avoid punishment. But if I leave Rome in silence and go far away somewhere, I shall place myself under still greater suspicion. It was bad in every case. The only question was to choose the less evil. So Rome was immense. Still felt that it might become too small for him. Any other man might go directly to prefect of the city guards and tell what happened, and though some suspicion might fall on him, await the issue calmly. But Chilo's whole past was such character in every closer acquaintance with the prefect of the city, or the prefect of the guard must cause him very serious trouble, and confirm also every suspicion which might enter the heads of the officials. On the other hand, to flee will be to confirm Petronius in the opinion that Vinicius had been betrayed and murdered through conspiracy. Petronius was a powerful man who could command the police of the whole empire, and who beyond doubt will try to find the guilty parties even at the ends of the earth. Still Chilo thought to go straight to him and tell what happened. Yes, that was the best plan. Petronius was calm, and Chilo might be sure of this, at least, that he will hear him to the end. Petronius, who knew the affairs from its inception, will believe Chilo's innocence more easily than all the prefects. But to go to him, it was needful to know with certainty what had happened to Vinicius. Chilo did not know that. He had seen, it is true, the legion stealing with Croto's body to the river, but nothing more. Vinicius might be killed, but he might be wandering undetained. Now it occurred to Chilo for the first time that surely the Christians would not dare to kill a man so powerful, a friend of Caesar, and a high military official, for that kind of act might draw on them a general persecution. It was more likely that they will had detained him by superior force to give Lygia means to hide herself a second time. This thought filled Chilo with hope. If that Lygian dragon has not torn him to pieces at the first attack, he is alive, and if he is alive, he himself will testify that I have not betrayed him, and that only does not threaten me. By O Hermes, count again on two heifers. A fresh field is opening. I can inform one of the freedmen where to seek his lord, and whether he goes to the prefect or not is his affair. The only point being that I should not go. Also, I can go to Petronius and count on a reward, and I have found Lygia. Now I shall find Vinicius, and then again Lygia. It is needful to know first whether Vinicius is dead or living. Here it occurred to him that he might go in the night to the baker Demas and inquire about Ursus, but he rejected that thought immediately. He preferred to have nothing to do with Ursus. He might suppose justly that if Ursus had not killed Glaucus, he had been warned, evidently by the Christian elder to whom he had confessed his design, warned that the affair was an unclean one, to which some traitor had persuaded him. In every case, at the mere recollection of Ursus, a shiver ran through Chilo's whole body, but he thought that in the evening he will send Odysseus for news for that house in which that thing had happened. Well, he needed refreshment, a bath, a rest, a sleepless night. The journey to Ostrianum, the flight from Trans-Tiber, had worried him excessively. One thing gave him permanent comfort. He had on his person two purses, and which Vinicius had given him at home, and that which had thrown him on the way from the cemetery. In view of this happy circumstance, and of the examen through which he had passed, he resolved to eat abundantly and drink better wine than he had drunk usually. When the hour for opening the wine shop came at last, he did so in such a marked measure that he forgot the bath. He wished to sleep above all, and drowsiness overcame his strength, so that he returned with tottering step to his dwelling in Subura, where a slave woman purchased with money obtained from Vinicius was waiting for him. When he had entered a sleeping room as dark as the den of a fox, he threw himself on the bed and fell asleep on one instant. He woke only in the evening, or rather he has roused by a slave woman, who called him to rise, for someone was inquiring and wishes to see him on urgent business. And that watchful Chilo came to himself in one moment, threw on his hooded mantle hastily, and commanding the slave woman to sit aside, looked out cautiously, and he was benumbed, for he saw before the door sleeping room the gigantic form of Ursus. At that night he felt his feet and head grow icy cold, the heart ceased to beat in his bosom, and shivers were creeping along his back. For a time he was unable to speak. Then, with a chattering teeth, he said, or rather groaned, Sira, I am not at home. I do know not, good man. I told him that thou wert at home, but asleep, lord, answered the girl. He asks to rouse thee. O gods, I will command that though. But Ursus, as if impatient of delay, approached the door of the sleeping room, and bending tossed his head. O Chilo Chilonedes, said he. Pax tecum, pax, answered Chilo, O best of Christians. Yes, I am Chilo. But this is a mistake. I do not know thee. Chilo chilo repeated Ursus. Thy lord Vinicius summons thee to go with me to him.